morning, everyone. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Bianca.
And welcome back to the PreService PODSQUAD podcast.
So this morning, our Motivational Monday is going to be a little bit more of a serious kind of talk. But what we wanted to bring to the table today is an Instagram post that I saw a few weeks ago. And it was actually an advertisement for Black History Month. It was this t-shirt that said something along the lines of like, 1 month isn't enough. It really hit me, and I feel like just that t-shirt, that phrase that they used, really has a deeper impact than the words that is written on it. Our motivation for you all today is just to be conscious of the information that you are going to be teaching your future students and realizing that diverse cultures is like rich and, cultural wealth, linguistic wealth, familial capital is something that we always want to be thinking about. So we hope that you have a pen and paper in hand, or if not, hopefully you can go back and listen to this episode because we are going to be talking about what we should be celebrating every month of the year and what we should be educating our kids about. And then maybe also talking about how each of these months maybe need to be celebrated for more than just 1 month. We honor September to be Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th. In October, we also have the Week of Respect. In November, we have Native American Heritage Month. December is all the holiday seasons like Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and Christmas. In January, we have Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th, as well as MLK Jr. Day.
In February, we have Black History Month, Random Acts of Kindness Day, and Lunar New Year. In March, we have Women's History Month. In April, we have Autism Awareness Month and Arab American Month. In May, we have Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. And in June, we have LGBTQ+ Pride Month and Juneteenth. So this is a list of months of the whole year where we commemorate certain cultures and holidays. And I think it's important that each month sort of is recognizing one, but as you mentioned before, they deserve more than just 1 month. In the parameters of the first day of the month to the last day of the month, we commemorate it. But then past those parameters, are we still highlighting that group? Especially if it's an underrepresented or marginalized group, they deserve more than just those 31 days. And so in my mind, what I'm thinking of, this means especially a lot to me as a history teacher of secondary education. What kind of message am I sending to my students if their culture is highlighted for just a few weeks and then past that, we don't speak of that at all? That's sending them the message that they're not deserving of any kind of importance or celebration past those parameters. And that's such a harmful narrative to spread to them because obviously their culture deserves to be celebrated all days of the year, 365 days. And I just don't want any student to feel like their culture doesn't have a place in my classroom. And so recognizing that these months are good because we're recognizing that they need to be highlighted, but it should be more than just this one label.
Yes, and I feel like even beyond what we listed, there are more things, like more celebration months that, exist. And especially in history, I feel like it is difficult for teachers to, have to abide by the curriculum, but then also expand it to include and represent the cultures of the students that they're teaching. And so it can be difficult to find that balance, but as you said, like students deserve to be learning about their culture and their classmates' cultures for more than just a few weeks at a time when we're recognizing it. So it's something that we have to consciously do. We have to consciously think about the ways that we are creating our lesson plans and deciding, what to teach and what not to teach. And it's something that you don't have to do on your own too. I feel like it's really important to collaborate with teachers around the school and just try to be as inclusive as possible, within the classroom.
Yeah, and I could see how it might be a concern of teachers. It's like, this is adding to their workload almost, or they might see it in that way. And I understand, but maybe a solution to that could be proposing a project where students do a project that highlights their own culture so that it can still be brought into the classroom, and it's not necessarily the responsibility of the teacher to pull from every single culture, but the student is given the autonomy to bring in what's most important to them. And maybe that's something that can be presented to the class as a whole, or maybe it could be a showcase at the school school so that everyone in the school community is exposed to what that student finds to be most important. Or it can take the forms of different mediums. Maybe it's in the form of a podcast or a video, a poster, a campaign poster. Like, it can be anything that the student wants to express themselves and what they find to be important and what they want to share with their peers. And so maybe that's a solution as well, so that we're not putting the entire workload on the teacher to take it on themselves, but rather give the students the freedom and independence to bring in what they want to bring in.
I think that is a great idea, especially when you give students choice and you let them express themselves in whatever way they see fit. It adds so much value to the work that they're doing because they feel connected to what they're learning. I feel like it's cool to work with other teachers in the building too. I know in high school we would have like international food, like culture days, and everyone would kind of just bring food that like their family cooks at home, or that maybe that they just really liked too. But it was such an easy way to learn about other people's culture, and very, very like low stakes, that everybody loved it, and we were all able to join in and celebrate each other together. But I feel like even as a future math teacher, I feel like this is still important, and I think about that a lot, about how history, like human history, intersects with math, because a lot of people think that math is just numbers and sort of like calculations, but the thing is that math comes from humans, like comes from human history, and students need to know that there is like a whole background to learning math, and it's not just history is not just associated with history class. So I definitely hope to do that in my own future math class. But one thing that I saw online of a teacher doing was she had a bookcase in her classroom, and she was an English teacher, but she was saying that like her district doesn't allow her to teach certain books. So instead of, like fighting that, what she did was she put a bookcase in her classroom, and she had the district's policy printed out and pasted on the side of the bookshelf saying like what she was expected to uphold. But then she would assign projects where students could write about whatever book they wanted, and many students would choose books that were on her bookshelf. And in that way, she was able to still follow the district's policy, but also, expose students to more like diverse readings and diverse authors. And I just think that this is like such a genius idea, and I definitely aspire to have a bookcase in my classroom, even though I'm teaching math, which I feel like is a little bit not traditional, but I think that's like a good way to like send a message to your students that, you were there for them, and like you were there for their entire identities, and you're not there to just teach your content area. But yeah, I think having a bookcase in your classroom is a great idea with like diverse authors, diverse readings. Even children's books is cool. I know I took a class called LGBTQ Issues in Education, and we talked a lot about, this debate going on of how elementary schoolers can't be like looking at like drag shows, or like, they're gonna be turned gay or whatever, people seem to think. But having children's books that talk about like different family structures, or just like how we're all different in our own ways, is a great way to engage students. Like, they're easy reads, and it's something that they could do after an assessment or if they're done with their work. And it's a great way to like give them an extra assignment that's pretty easy and still like very educational. Also a way that you can be like, hey, if you do this, I'll give you an extra point on your next homework assignment or something like that.
Absolutely, and I love the idea of the bookcase, because I think that incorporates what we were talking about before by giving students the choice of what they want to explore more. So maybe they would pick a book that represents them and what they see in themselves, or maybe they would choose a book that is representing people who are different from themselves, so that they could explore what it looks like to come from a different background or culture. And so I think that's a really cool idea, and like I said, it incorporates like that student autonomy of what they want to learn, and that's really important as well. If students have a choice and a say in what they're exploring and learning, then they're likely going to be a little bit more motivated to do so, because it's not us telling them what they need to do, they get to choose. And so that's really important as well. And I think something that stems from this is the whole idea of activism and advocacy, and something that I think is really important for us to do, and I think this spans across all grade levels, is that we need to equip our students with the skills and experiences they need to be advocates in their local community. And so maybe this could be, for example, like at the secondary level, example, in a middle school or high school, if a teacher, say, there was like a rally going on in the local community, or a board of education meeting or a town meeting, maybe the teacher takes their class on a field trip and they go and see what that looks like, what it looks like to try to make change in a community. And so maybe you have a few students who are inspired and they want to pursue that as a potential career. That's a really great opportunity as well, and I think that's not explored enough in schools. And so if we were to equip all of our students with these skills to make the change they wanted to see, I think it's so cool to envision how different our communities may look like if we empowered our students to make a change. I think the school system can sometimes be a little monotonous of just sort of going through the routine and checking off the boxes. And so if we try to break away from that a little bit and empower our students to have their own voice, which we've touched on a lot already, then I would love to see what our communities would then change into looking like if our students felt as if they had a voice and had power in the decisions and things that were going on in their local area.
That's such a great idea too, and I feel like sometimes field trips and like those sort of excursions are almost frowned upon because it is difficult to like take students somewhere and like have teachers watch them, and it's a lot of logistics to figure out, but to think of like the educational benefit for the student, it outweighs any sort of work that you're gonna have to do to get them to wherever.
Yes. And if that's maybe like a complicated thing that seems like a lot to organize, maybe you work with a couple of other teachers in your building to kind of take the workload off of each other, and maybe a bunch of classes go to, you know, some kind of rally or protest. And so, I don't know, I think that I would love to see that more in our schools.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with like viewing education and teaching as something that we have to do holistically and keep the whole child in mind. And that, you know, students are not just coming to school ready to learn, ready to get into it, and like they're ready to hear everything you have to say about whatever you're teaching. Like there can be other things going on, or like things that they want to learn about, that you kind of have to tune into their emotions and their like how they're feeling every single day, and try to provide like a space for learning and teaching where number one, you can learn and teach each other, but number two, you're considering like all aspects of their identity and just like how they're doing, like their wellness, their well-being. And I feel like that will be successful. I think it's also easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we're proposing these ideas, and maybe this is something that you try to take into your own classroom, and maybe it's a project that takes a few years to work up to, but I think that's okay. And if you do eventually get it off the ground, I think it would be very impactful.
Yes, I think just one last thing I do want to say about, you know, talking about 1 month isn't enough. I think that we should capitalize on students, you know, cultural identities, like all intersecting aspects of their identity. But I also find that this is something that a lot of our like stores will capitalize on, which is not like, I find that to be a little bit unacceptable. Like I know that when you walk into Target, like in the month of June, you see all like the like pride flags and, you know, a bunch of different merchandise that they're trying to sell specifically like for that month just to make profit off of like things that people are celebrating. But I think the lesson in teaching this to our students, that it isn't enough to just be talking about this 1 month, that, you know, the whole year we should be talking about like Indigenous Peoples Day, or in the history of Indigenous people, or, you know, any other example. And it's kind of hard to do that when we have external factors teaching them otherwise. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy pride shirts because we're really like, we want to be an ally, or we are part of the community, we want to support it. But it's like, it's hard not to fall into these tropes that exist in our society, and teachers have to be like activists in their own ways in like trying to change that.
Absolutely. We've made a lot of change and a lot of progress, but there's still so much work that needs to be done. And a lot of that work will be done by our future students. And so we need to definitely shape those generations into making the change that we want to see.
Yes. I could not agree more. That is, you know, we are educating the next generation of leaders and activists. So 100%, 1000%, 1,000,000%, we have to like keep their future in mind and the future of our world in mind.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this Motivational Monday. I appreciate you being here. We hope this gave you a little bit of insight as to what you should be including in your classrooms and educating your students on. And overall, I think the overarching theme is to just keep the identity and cultures of your students in mind when incorporating information into your classrooms. And remember that 1 month isn't enough. We need to highlight all of these things across every single day of the year.
Yes, and don't be afraid to ask questions or educate yourself when needed. It is no shame at all. It's actually amazing that you are taking initiative. So thank you everyone for joining and listening with us. We hope to see you next week. We're so excited for our next main episode, and we are sending you into this Monday with positive sunshine vibes. So happy Monday, everyone.